Away. Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday.
Greetings.
Happy Thursday evening for some of you, afternoon for others. I think that's all we got, time zone. Let's see, though. Let's confirm that.
I'm pretty sure there's morning, Dan, as you head west from here.
No,
California
and
is 7 in the morning.
yes. I'm just seeing if there's anybody on from California. Maybe. I'm not sure. So anyway, how's everyone doing? What's new, Pat? You went skiing, and you're in one piece. So here's the deal. Once a year, Pat goes skiing. And so once a year you go, and you stay strong, you stay healthy. So tell us about it. How did it go?
Well, I stayed strong and I stayed healthy. So here's the story. Yeah, I go skiing. This year was a little different because it's COVID. Typically for me, I go skiing kind of by myself. It's been kind of a meditative time. So I just love being on the mountain. I've been skiing since I've been 6 years old. So it's just one of those sports. It's just there for me and I don't have to think about it. And it's I just love it. This year we did a little bit differently. So we drove out there. My wife came along, her sister came along, and we brought our 3 dogs. And we piled into the Tesla and we drove all the way up to the mountains in Colorado. So it's kind of a fun cross country road trip, and rented a place up there, and it was great. But I will say this though, the place we rented was the altitude was at about 10,500 feet. I don't think I've ever slept that high before. And it was the first time I've ever been a little challenged by altitude. Like I'm used to getting off the chairlift, and you're kind of like a little lightheaded for a few minutes, but then you ski down, you start to get the oxygen back. But it took a couple of days of adjustment. So it was had to really slow down, but it was great. Just great to be on the road and great to be on the mountain, and happy to be back.
Yes, so it's good to have you back. Hey, Elsa, we see you looking at comments here. Hey, Nicole. Good to see you on. So we have, if I get all my countries right, we have Germany, we have the UK, Dalton Scott. I think you might be new to are you new to our community? I see your comment.
Oh,
outstanding.
Welcome,
well, there's a hazing you have to go through.
Yeah.
Chris Reese.
Mr. Reese is in the house.
What's up, man? So I have, well, first of all, we're bringing on Chris Broderick today. I'm thrilled. I'm going to give her the official appropriate intro in a moment, but she is awesome and we're so excited to have her on. It's going to be outstanding. But Pat, I have a kind of a funny story, or just, I guess, a relevant story for what we're going to talk about today. I was in the neighborhood. I was driving to get some coffee, and I drove by our old Modern Survey headquarters, which is pretty close to where our new offices are. And it occurred to me when I read it, I read the word survey, Modern Survey, and we named the company that for a reason back in 1999. And it's nice, by the way, to see our branding still alive and well on the wall. So it was cool. It's always good to see that. But then I started thinking about surveying, and I started thinking about what do I think about surveying? And we talk about this a lot on a weekly basis. And is it still being, how can we continue to evolve this? How can we continue to be more, focused and intentional? And then I went to get the coffee, and after I got done, I got a receipt, and they said, if you take a survey, you can get a free coffee. And so that was then surveying. I started to live and breathe surveying that day, and it was funny because that was a very relevant moment, right, where it was a survey on my experience at that moment. And so it started to make me think about how are we doing with employees in really making surveys timely, making them relevant, making them about the experience that someone just went through, and I don't know. What do you think about that, Pat? Because I know this is something that we know has to continue to evolve. Where do you think we are with that? And Chris is going to give us a very good summary of that. So.
Well, it's a really good example, right? That's on the consumer side when you talked about getting a survey at the time of the transaction. And I mean, that's still very much used in retail, right? To kind of get that
Yeah.
get that immediate measure of an experience that someone has as a customer. I think that's maybe still a reasonably good example of it, because you don't know a lot about the customer, right? Different from the employee situation where you have a lot more context about an employee, but this is just someone who's there. So the timeliness is good. I do wonder a little bit about the bias, like who takes the time to complete surveys and why do they take time to do surveys. I can't tell you how many times in a consumer setting I've been encouraged to, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely I am to recommend that please do a 9. Please do a 9 or 10. It means a lot to me. And if for some reason,
Yes.
it's less than that, can you call me directly? I mean, like some kind of recourse, because people are really held to that metric, and then it becomes about a number and not about what the whole purpose is to understand the psychology behind the experience. So it is something to look at, but if you think of how we've been chatting about understanding the employee experience in the new normal, I don't know, it does feel kind of old fashioned to me. Big picture.
Yeah, it's the best example, Pat, is if you lease a car or you buy a car, when you're specifically asked to give them a 10. That you're actually like, you will be giving me a 10, right? It's and we talk about survey bias. So today, with that, I'm going to kind of just talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. It's kind of 3 or 4 topics. Then we'll introduce Chris and bring her on and let the fun begin. So the 3 core themes are, we want to talk about a people first strategy, and what does that mean? We say it often, and when Chris comes on, I believe she's one of the originators of that hashtag. She's been saying this for a long time, and not only just saying it, she's been putting in programs throughout her career, really living this and doing some incredibly innovative stuff. So I want to just break that down a little bit and say, what does it mean? Are we saying people over profits? Are we saying people first, then profits second? Or if we're saying, if we treat our people right, profits will follow, right? So I want to talk about that and really define it. And then I want to go into, we're going to talk about sort of the now and the future of employee listening in a world that is about continuous response, right? So what does it look like now in 2021, and what is it going to look like into the future? And then finally, we are going to talk a little bit about, and I'm really excited about this. This is something Chris has been working on and doing some research on, around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and leveraging some engineering principles to de-bias the work environment. So I really want to understand and get a better sense of some of the ideas that she's been thinking about. And I'm super excited about this. I intentionally haven't really asked her around, what are these principles she's working around, because I wanted it to be a fun, surprising conversation for us. So I'm excited. Those are the kind of 3 topic areas today.
Yeah, and Chris is, I've seen her present so many times. She's always, I feel like she's like a couple of years ahead of everyone else in terms of framing these things, thinking about it, doing the research and doing the work, not just kind of speculating and riffing, but actually kind of approaching it as kind of in many ways as an engineer, as a scientist, to come up with new ways of thinking about this. And I don't want to spoil the surprise, but we'll let her be herself, and everyone else will get to enjoy what we have enjoyed in the past.
Yeah, well, so with that, let me just give her a little bit of her background for everybody. Hey, while I'm doing that, before I do that, I'm just seeing a handful of people popping on here. If you're, I guess we already have. I know, Dalton, you're new to the community. Just let me know how is everybody doing. Just say, doing great, doing average, not doing so great. And when I say this, it doesn't have to be any specific to work, or just in general. How are you feeling? And I'm asking this question because there's been so much change. Things are starting to come back, right? Vaccinations are starting to happen. We just passed the relief package for COVID. I feel like there's a lot of optimism. It's at least where we are in Minneapolis, it's sunny. I'm looking at a perfectly blue sky. And I'm an optimist, I'll admit to that, but I want to get a sense of how everybody's doing. So if you wouldn't mind, just throw into the comments how you're feeling. Great, average, could be better. And would love to.
Big thumbs up from Chris Reese.
Good. Chris is feeling good. All right. So Chris Broderick. So she is the founder and president of Be Near Global, and they're a people and culture consulting company, and that's her latest endeavor. But she has a long resume, so I won't go through it all, or we won't have time to even bring her on. But I will say a couple of things about her. She's an early adopter of natural language processing and machine learning, and I say this with a lot of I guess I really mean this, because a lot of people talk about, NLP and then there's those who have really implemented solutions and programs that have leveraged it to its fullest extent. And she's definitely a pioneer with this. And she's also a pioneer and one of the first to really start to introduce what we know now as pulsing, continuous listening, continuous dialogue, real-time insights. So she can talk a little bit about that. And so getting her opinion on where the future is going is going to be so awesome. And her mission is helping people and companies do their best work and reach their highest potential. So you can understand why we love having her on the show. And without further ado, Pat, unless you want to add anything to that intro, I am going to bring Chris on.
No, that was great. Let's get her in the mix.
All right. Chris, you should have an invite on the way. We will see your smiling face. Nicole, feeling great. That is good. Dalton, feeling pretty good. Okay. Well, hopefully after today, you'll be feeling great. That'd be good. Chris.
There she is.
Hey, how are
Chris.
you guys? So good to see you. It's been forever.
Likewise. I know it has.
It's been way too long. Good to see you.
Yeah.
What's new?
So much is new. I have a junior and senior in high school, which is so freaking hard to believe, but true.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
And it's been an amazing year, hasn't it? I mean, wow. Life and work, and I've got all my chickadees in my house, which after having my husband on the road for 2 years and home for like 2 days at a time and then back out to another country, this has been such an incredibly just warm and reconnecting time. So that's been a blessing to us.
That's great. And you look great, Chris. You look rested. You look glowing. So
that's what happens when you have your own business, right? I get to do great work, but I get to do it when I want it. And it's been a wonderful season for me.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good. And it's only March, and 2021 is looking up.
And it's sunny in Chicago this time of year.
It's sunny here too.
Great. Yeah. And our snow is almost gone. So getting ready to start running again. And yeah. So it'll be good.
We have such a global audience. Is it sunny in Germany or in London? Let us know. We just need, because we're experiencing sun. Chris is experiencing sun. We want to know if we're all feeling that same.
I am such a sun person. Like, I love the warmth, and I could like lay in the sun forever and just get such energized by it. Yeah. But a little tidbit, and kudos to you guys. Last night spent a little time and watched Tuscaloosa. So congratulations.
Cool. Wow.
And fantastic work.
Oh, thank you.
Just super proud of you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, awesome. It was big project, and it's been really fun to see the ongoing success around it as well. We're still, we just played in, keep winning Best Picture awards at film festivals, and
fantastic.
It's just been great. So it's making its way around the planet now, which is really fun.
Love it. Yeah, and so timely, right? Like so timely with what's happening in the world right now, and you guys were spot on and ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, sadly, it became more and more relevant.
Well,
so that's a whole nother topic.
Yes, we could.
That's a whole nother topic.
Yes, let's. So Chris, again, thank you for joining us. I guess I'm going to first just ask you about kind of a people first approach, and maybe if you were listening to us in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. I do think you were one using that hashtag and really just so passionate about what does it mean to have a people first strategy. So, for those listening today, let's talk about. I mean, the lip service of saying people first, of course, is great and it's the right thing to say, but let's break it down a little bit. And when we say this, what are we asking of our organizations? What are we asking of our leaders when we indicate we want to build and really focus on a people first strategy? So just want to get your opinion and because of your expertise in this.
Yeah, sure. So I guess one of the first thing that comes to mind is, and for just a level set, like I've worked in so many different organizations in consulting, right, with large corporations as a part of PwC, and working in a small OD firm before that, and then working in a large enterprise like IBM. And I remember at one point talking with a leader about engagement, right, when engagement was all the craze. And hearing that this particular leader didn't care if employees were happy. And what stuck out to me was not happy, but care. Like, I don't care if people are happy. Okay, problem number one, right? We need to care about our most, dominant resource and greatest expense in the operation, right? Our people are our greatest resource. They are our most costly resource in the organization. And so as leaders, it's inherent upon us to truly care. And I think that's something that is essential within all of our organizations. And a lot of leaders don't get training, right? Like leaders aren't trained how to be leaders. Like sometimes they become leaders because they were the greatest salesperson, or they were the greatest engineer, or, whatever their expertise might have been threw them into a leadership position. And I think what's essential is that like every person has a story, right? And so early in my career, I was a journalist, right? And it was my job to find people and find stories and get them on the air. And so that was kind of the first piece that, okay, everybody's got a story and you can get it. And the second thing was, well, if you then create space, so then fast forward, I moved from a reporting job to a nonprofit because then I wanted to save the world, right? So if you give people space in a nonprofit, right? We had a shelter there. It was a global nonprofit organization. And they will tell you the story underneath the story, right? Yes, I'm living in a shelter. Yes, my kids are here with me. No, I don't have a job. Yes, this organization's helping me build skills. But here's why. Here's how this happened, and I used to have a family in a house with a pool and medical bills and right there's the reality of what's underneath the story. And then fast forward to the OD consulting firm that I was working at as a 20-some-year-old person, and learned the power of using those stories to drive change across an organization, right? So starting with the ability to isolate and find the story, right? Get the story, but then get underneath the story and then use the power of those stories across teams, across groups, across an enterprise to completely shift the thought process, to completely shift the way that we do work. But it all starts with caring about the people. Is that helpful?
It's very it's very helpful, very elegantly put. If those who listen to Pat and I on a weekly basis, we talk about caring more and loving more, right? And that is so important in organizational culture. And I think the thing that organizations sometimes are challenged by is, can we teach caring, or is it sort of more inherent to a person, right? And so as leaders, how do we ask our people to care more? And maybe it starts, I believe it starts with listening, right? And trying to understand what you don't agree with, and being empathetic for different opinions, and understanding different opinions, and knowledge helps you care more, right? Because it allows you to help put things in perspective. So what, when you're working with clients, Chris, how do you coach on caring? It's a tough question, but
it is a tough question. But I think one of the most powerful pieces of work that I've uncovered and then used continuously over the last 12 to 18 months in my practice comes out of MIT. Hal Gregerson, who heads up their leadership center there, wrote a book called Questions Are the Answer. If you haven't read Questions Are the Answer, like, I highly recommend it. And it's all about putting yourself in places where you're uncomfortable, right? So find those people, those places, those ideas, those things that just make you feel like uncertain, right? Like you're not on level footing. And when you're not on level footing, then your brain has to start to go in new directions, and you start asking all different kinds of things that you never really had to ask before. So, I mean, I love that. And so I'll get on the brown line instead of the green line, and I'll go on the red line to get to some circuitous path to get to someplace, because then you're encountering people that you wouldn't typically encounter. You're hearing conversations that you wouldn't hear, and it begins to cause you to go inside and ask, what's happening inside of me, and what is that feeling that I'm feeling? Am I anxious? Am I surprised? Am I intrigued? Am I really gonna like ask a question of what I hear going on over there? But it's through those kinds of moments that we're able to open ourselves up to new and different things, and then get the story underneath the story and begin to really truly have empathy and care and be compassionate for the people around us.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it, Chris. And and like you said, that work is really hard. I mean, being in that space of ambiguity and moving in there, as humans, we have to work really hard to overcome that inertia and start to get into that space. But you're right, because what it forces us to do is we have to then trust in other people. We have to carefully listen to the signals around us, because everything's new. We have to pay more attention, and then you have these incredible connections that get made with people or situations because you need to, and then those moments become like a new kind of a shared value, a shared moment that is sort of a new foundational piece for you and for the context, right? And then and that's how the brain starts to kind of build new capacity to start to just to move into these new spaces. But much more easier said than done. I think this is, I mean, I remember talking to you about this years ago, probably 5-6 years ago, when we talked about the idea of kind of mindfulness and like how you bring some of these ideas into the way we work and the way we move into new spaces. But it has to be very focused, disciplined work in order to get comfortable with that ambiguity.
And you know what? There's a practice that that Gregerson has in his book, and it's called Question Burst. And honestly, the hard part of that is that you realize that it can be super easy. And the exercise is super simple. Like, it takes 6 minutes, right? So it's quick. And for 2 minutes, a person will describe a challenge that they're facing right now, and they feel stuck, like they really just don't know what to do. And then for 4 minutes, a group of people around them just piles question upon question upon question upon question upon question. And that person can do nothing except zip their mouth and just write down the questions, right? And you can see the shoulders like go from up here to down here. And it's so freeing, and it's so releasing, and they have no compunction. They are not responsible in any way, shape, or form to defend or to, feel like they've got something to prove. All they do is write questions. And then from those questions, they'll get 15 to 20 questions in 4 minutes. And then they can begin to say, okay, how do these aggregate into themes, and which of these make me feel most uncomfortable, and which is the one that I'm actually going to pursue? And truly, the hard work of, the defensiveness that comes up for us naturally as humans, and the residing in the discomfort, gets easy as you just let the wisdom of others come into your space. And then that becomes a gift that you can then take away and leverage to solve a problem. So it's an exercise that I encourage people to go through, because it helps your brain shift. It kind of accelerates the shift for your brain in, oh, this helps me. Oh, this is awesome. And it gives you a new way to stay open to something that otherwise would have been super hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you before the end of the hour, can you put the name of the book in the chat?
And the exercise,
yeah, that'd be a great, just so people could see that. That's fantastic. And one thing I was thinking about, well, two things, and I'll lead us into this to another question I have for you. But questions. I think we need to empower our leaders to understand that questions should, in most cases, lead to more questions, right? So kind of then, and how you're talking, it doesn't, because this allows the collective to understand. And I think one of the biggest blockers of caring more is actually fear. And fear comes when you're not a part of listening, you're not a part of challenging. And the way to reduce fear is to ask more questions and to understand and become more comfortable, right? Even if you don't absolutely agree with it, but you become more comfortable accepting it. And I think that is a really key part to how great teams function and how great teams work. And then they can lock arms, and we can rally around a common purpose, a common cause, a common mission. And that's how incredible work can be done.
Yeah, and I think you're making me think of a recent experience. There's all kinds of great learning, right? And so this year has been such a fantastic opportunity to tap into new learning, to see webinars on all different kinds of topics everywhere, and everybody can get that for free. And there's Udemy, and there's LinkedIn Learning, and there's Coursera and edX, and all kinds of places to get new learning. I recently took a course on DE&I at Burson's Academy. And what I love about what he's done is he's made the learning, he's put folks into cohorts. And so as you go through the learning process, you actually have that opportunity to have people from all over the world putting their comments to answering different probes that are a part of the learning experience. And then, interacting with those online. And I've just found such an opportunity to encounter new and different thinking that wasn't a part of what I experienced before, and really enjoying that. And so I think this continuous learning process kind of feeds into that and can be really powerful too.
Yeah, I was going to jump in with just a little tidbit of story, and then I've got a question for you, Chris. So I remember years ago when I saw you present at one of Al's conferences. You talked
years
ago. I don't even know. Probably it seems like 20 years ago because of the pandemic. 4 years ago. Anyway, you talked about the work you did at IBM, where you asked you had a method by which people would kind of share 3 words that describe how they were feeling. And this gets to the bigger question I'm going to have for you in a minute about scale. I kind of do some of this work at scale, but I just thought that was at the time, such a lovely kind of organic way to be able to get a sense. It kind of gets at what you're talking about in such a simple way, where we could kind of at scale, whether it's looking at a team or a group or part of the organization, kind of get a sense of where's the feeling at, how are people feeling, and then you would I think maybe you created a word cloud out of it or something, so we could get a glimpse at more of the real human experience happening at any given moment. But I was going to just give you a little story. So I really love that so much. And I think it was that same year, I have friends who are dancers, and they developed this really cool piece where it was done here in Minneapolis in a park. And the way it worked is you were kind of assigned, you would like sign up and you'd show up and you were assigned a dancer, and you'd go off and have this experience in the park. And it was this super kind of postmodern, like beautiful experience. And it was just incredible. You kind of get connected to the landscape of the park and the dancer, and it was wonderful. Anyway, they were trying to come up with a way to measure that, like what is it, like how does this, because a lot of their work is how does our work as artists transform people? And I said, and they asked me, because they knew I was the survey guy, like and I think they had a grant they had to fulfill too, because they had to come up with an excuse for why someone gave them $25,000 to do this. And they, I said, oh, I have an idea for you. I said, ask each participant at the beginning of the exercise 3 words that describes how they feel. And at the end, ask 3 words about how they feel. So they would measure, and that's what they did. And they did this for literally hundreds and hundreds of people. And they were able to kind of map out how this experience kind of, in aggregate on different days would transform people, through this experience. And it was just like this simple, lovely, elegant way to do it. So I just wanted to share it with you.
Thank you. I love that. The way that came to be, right, was truly create an environment where my guys could do what you need to do. Like, Chris, we're going to coffee, and they went out to coffee and they came back, and it was when the ice bucket challenge was really popular. And so they were like, okay, how can we kind of do something like that here? Well, why don't we, and we had done this neat word cloud thing with our survey and what the responses were, and, used NLP and sentiment analysis to discover what kinds of things. Anyway, but that was the survey stuff. But we used that same word cloud approach with 3 words, and it was my week in 3 words. We were in the midst of a huge transformation within the organization, and we just wanted to have a regular pulse on what was happening. So people would, at any point in time during the week, type in travel, complexity, and who knows what else, donuts. And then we could slice and dice it by all the architects. What were they thinking? And, what were the project managers thinking? How about the consultants? How about our folks in the call centers? And really get a feel for, was it red? Did we have a lot of green? Were all of our project managers just pulling their hair out? So it was a really wonderful window for all of us on how was the transformation going.
I love it.
Love that.
So how do we take these ideas that you and Dan were just talking about and start to think about doing it at scale? What you just described earlier.
Yeah, and I know that was always my challenge at the time. I would tell all these fantastic stories, and they were so great, and people were like, well, yeah, how do I do that? And what is a solution that actually is cost effective for a medium-sized business? And so now, with the proliferation of the HR technology that's available, and so much the SaaS platforms that are out there that are so much more affordable, companies can do things like this. And Red Thread Research, Stacia Sherman-Gar and Danny Johnson and Priyanka Amarota, they are making it all accessible to us in terms of you go to their research website and they kind of just lay out the landscape for you. If you're interested in DE&I, these are the folks that are the big players. And they have just a wealth of information where you can compare and contrast, look for the best fit for yourself, understand where their strengths are. I mean, such a gift and such a gap that Red Thread has had the opportunity to fill so generously in the early years. And now it's a small nominal cost to have access to that information.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So guess, everyone knows me well enough. Guess what I'm going to ask the crowd right now? 3 words. How are you feeling? How's your week going? Let's see it. You have the expert here. You have the creator of this. So if you can only come up with 1, that's fine too. You don't have to come up with 3. And thank you, Heidi. We have a very, very a proactive crowd here. Heidi already put in the name of the book, so we are. Thank you. So this is the book that Chris was talking about earlier. So thanks, Heidi. And those who I saw a few people just recently joined too. So what we're asking is throw in 3 words of just how you're feeling today. Really this week. How's your week been? I asked earlier, but now let's get specific with 3 words, and we can do our own word cloud here. We'll see what happens. So, Chris, while people are doing that, fortunate, relieved, optimistic. Thanks, Chris. Fantastic. So let's actually get into more of the employee listening in 2021, and really. We've gone from, as we all know in the industry, we've gone from satisfaction surveys to engagement surveys. Then we started to enter into this, more data must be better mentality. And we did, and some of us did it really well, and some of us didn't do it so well. And this was more of that continuous dialogue, the always on approach, continuous listening. But I think what we found during that process is that we were surveying more, but it wasn't as relevant. It wasn't as intentional, and it wasn't based on Pat and I, when we started, the experience of something that someone's going through, right? That moment, capturing those moments and getting feedback on it. So then we started to shift to employee experience, right? Let's understand the experience of our employees. And that's more timely, more relevant, more intentional. So, and when we think about in a world that is also is continuous, there's continuous action and continuous change. What do you think, Chris? What does a continuous listening strategy look like in 2021, or an employee listening strategy in a continuous response environment? Like, how would you consult a company on this?
Well, I think the pandemic taught us that we don't have to have, an IBM social pulse, right? Continuously tapping and pulling data off of passive spaces, pulling passive data into an engine and then churning stuff out. Companies had to figure out ways to find out what was happening with their people. Companies that were previously, in person only, like that's the only thing they knew, were thrown into an environment where all of a sudden their people were all working out of a home office. And it was exciting to talk to companies to see, what did it look like for you? And I'm helping Northwestern with a series of roundtable discussions with a variety of different speakers and webinars around various topics. And one of the first ones we did was, how did you guys deal with COVID when it first hit? And we had Salesforce, and we had Bristol Myers Squibb, and we had Patagonia, and Patagonia was one of the ones with we didn't believe in remote. Like, even our admin, like everybody in the office was away in a remote location. And she said that they were just trying to figure out process engineering, how is it that we can make our places safe when we do want to bring people back into the office, when we have to do other aspects of the work. They were essentially doing consulting work, right, within the enterprise, which they never had to do before. And just reconsidering the DE&I, given all that happened last year. Organizations had to do so many different things to understand where was their employee population at, and wellness became a huge focus for so many people. As time away from people was prolonged, then loneliness, right? And the potential anxiety and depression and all of those things became such a central focus. So you don't have to have, the biggest and brightest and fanciest, but you do have to have ways for your people to share their voice. And you need to create that space, that safe space, so that you get to the story that's underneath the story. You don't get the, doing good, doing fine, when in reality, there's something much deeper underneath that the organization could provide some support to alleviate some real challenges. But if you can't get to the story under the story, you're never going to know that there's a challenge that you need to support.
Yeah, it's funny. I always talk about 2020. We went from the question of how are you doing today, to asking the question and really caring about the response you're going to hear, right? So I think in the past, like you said, it was this very transactional conversation. Even just asking that simple question to your team, to a friend at work, to a peer. But now, because of loneliness, because of a need for interaction and connection, and I'm using that question as one example, but it became a conversation to really get to know each other. And we've kind of moved from really truly caring about someone's well-being and their health and their mental health, while before it was just a passing conversation, and it was just a conversation starter, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really proud that that's happened, and what we have to do is it has to continue to happen, right? And this is the opportunity we all have on the call, and we all have in this community, and we all have And it doesn't matter what position we have within our organizations. We all have to be a part of this change and this movement.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain amount, Patrick, you mentioned earlier mindfulness, right? And staying present in the moment. And yes, everybody has a list of things that you need to accomplish today, right? But when you have the gift of someone's presence, to truly be there and hear them and support them in what they're up against in the moment, I think is so essential, and it's sometimes hard to remember, but it's important to remember.
Yeah,
I love that, the gift of someone's presence. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
If you write a book, Chris, that's got to be your title.
That is a really good one. And I know we have Ben Brad on the conference here as well. And Ben talks a lot about, sort of like the at the atomic level, teams are put together by sort of a shared mean. He puts it a connection that people have, a shared value, a shared connection. And if you take the time, like you said, to listen and be engaged and be more present, I think that you just get more of that more of those connection points happen. And we have a much richer foundation on which to trust each other, and just to have more empathy for each other, and to really, and like to bring it full circle, like the story is where this is, like, I really understand you as a person,
Yeah.
And that just gives us so much more strength to build on, versus the way Dan described it, those kind of cursory transactional connections that maybe we used to have, because we really didn't bring that into the work. It was all about the work. It was all about getting through. It was all about the day and the goals, right? And that's a different way to think and approach it.
And those things, we need the work to happen. We do. But the way that we really can get the work to happen faster and better, right, is to truly know the people and to support them and equip them in the way that they need to be supported and equipped, so that they really can run. Like, let these guys run, and they will run all day long and love it, right? Like, and the whole experience is so much better for everybody. And the company will see better business benefits, and which will get to something that we'll talk about later, is this whole engineering approach, which so exciting.
Yes, and we need to get to that, because we're going to run out of time if we don't. But I do want to bring up what you just said and kind of what we're talking about. And I love the three words that your organization that you talk about, Chris, which is truth, trust, and optimism. And I think that really gets to the heart of empathy. And if there's trust with each other, that's going to create a safe place, right? If there's truth, you're going to be more effective as a team. You're going to have more respect for each other. You're going to have better conversation, more authentic conversation. If there's optimism is fuel for growth. Optimism is fuel and gives you reason to hope. And optimism drives, I think, a brighter future. And so I think those three things together are just beautiful words. So I want to compliment you on those.
I don't want you to sound like they're just words. Like, they were like when I left, like, my whole identity, I was like, oh, who am I? Like, what am I if I don't have this big, highfalutin thing with all these great people all around me? Like, but it was so cathartic that I was just like, boom, here it is, right? Like, why am I here? I am here to help really create environments that are just anchored in this stuff that is truth. What do we believe? What do we know to be true? Right? It doesn't mean that I can't open myself up to hear what other people believe to be true, and what they've seen and what they've experienced and what they know. And because then I surround myself with people with all different kinds, then our collective idea about what is and then what can be possible grows that much bigger. And trust, like, so I thought through all the research and all the years of working with leaders and what was essential, and trust is at the very core of that within our teams and within all of our relationships. And then optimism, right? Like, we can do this, like, together we can do anything. So, like, let's get at it, right? So anyway, that's where those come from.
I love it. We should be, we need to get into engineering principles, but before we do that, Chris, let's do a real-time word cloud, because a lot of people have taken the time.
Awesome.
So we have, start reading some of them. We have fortunate, relieved, optimistic. We have energized, optimistic. I love optimistic as a theme here. And excited, challenged, excited, thankful, upside down, Literally, or just
Yeah.
oops, my headphones falling.
Headstands going on.
Oh,
A little yoga.
Sorry, my
Optimistic for Ben as
earpods are
well.
falling out.
Yeah.
A tired, hopeful, hungry is the first. Okay, well that's there's a quick remedy for that. This is great. So, Chris, what are the themes? We have a optimistic group here, I think.
Awesome. Awesome. So where do we go from here?
So,
I mean, I guess
all right,
quickly on the continuous response, I don't think I mentioned,
yeah,
but that's where I believe we're headed, is that in an environment, right, we've kind of gone through all these machinations, ultimately where I think the organization needs to understand, an organization can seek to understand what's the biggest challenges that we're facing, and then what are the data that we have accessible to us, and whether that be, you know, everything from surveys and polls and maybe some continuous listening devices that we have within our enterprise, instant messaging, calendars, ops kinds of DevOps kind of metrics. Like, what do we have accessible to us to get underneath it? Josh Bersin put out an article recently on continuous response with a whole bunch of Medallia case studies in it. Ultimately, this may all be automated, which will be fantastic. But in the meantime, right, gather the data that you can, pull together teams. I think the big insertion here for kind of a way forward until everything is automated is create like a response team that takes the data and all the findings that have been gathered, and then triage them to the best part of the organization that can address those, so that we are able to shorten that time frame between signals and actual action. Because the quicker that can happen, the more the organization levels of trust can strengthen, because people then know that it's safe to share information, and that information will be acted upon, and that there's processes and mechanisms in place to ensure that that is as quick as possible.
Love it.
I love that. And you know, one thing I would, just final sentence I would add to that is amplify success with stories, right? And what I mean by that is share, and whether it's just individual, something amazing that an individual has done, or a team has done, or something they've been working on in the community, or a success the company has had. Amplify these things, amplify the culture you want to grow into, and amplify the change you want to see with storytelling, because storytelling, as we know, people will remember that. Employees and workers will remember that well before they remember data points.
So true.
So I think that's such a key piece of this. So, all right, so we need to get, so I'm so excited. So engineering principles. So I'm going to set this up, and then I'm going to give the mic to you, Chris, because this is exciting. So kind of within diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, this is I don't know if it's a thesis or if it's some new ideas that you have, but
it's a new relationship. So I met someone. No, you know, I met Rajesh Anandan. If you don't know Rajesh, you need to. He has a company called Ultranauts. He has 75% of his employees are on the autism spectrum. He is winning work away from some of the largest engineering enterprises in the world. Last year, his company grew 70% on top of, you know, where they were in the midst of a pandemic. He's won. He has been named a Fast Company World-Changing Idea, MIT Solve Challenge winner, Interbrand Breakthrough Brand. I mean, these guys are incredible. So it's called Ultranauts, not astronauts, but Ultranauts. They are an engineering, a quality engineering firm. And in the meantime, they are breaking down processes to understand, where does the bias live? And not only are they doing that for their own organization, that's where it started, but they are beginning to work with other organizations, namely a management consulting firm and a medical devices firm, to begin to say, how translatable is this approach to larger enterprises, right? Does it work for us because we're small, or can we in fact take this knowledge and share it across other organizations? And so I have brought Rajesh to the Northwestern work that I'm doing around webinars and getting new ideas out in front of people. I'll be presenting with him next month in April at People Analytics World, if folks want to hear some of his things there. He and his team have published a paper on inclusive agile. So how is it that other engineering teams and people in tech can begin to debias the way that they approach their work? But while in light of time for folks here on today's call, they use universal design principles and apply it to their workplace. And so 4 dimensions of the universal design principles that they've put at work in their space are flexibility. So where, how, and when people work. If you Google Biodex, B-I-O-D-E-X, it is the mechanism that they use within their organization to better understand, what do people need, right? Like, how do you best work? In Slack, when I Slack you, how long is it going to typically take you? Are you having a bad day today, right? So they create this list that is on everybody. You can pull it up for anybody and everybody in the organization and get a feel for where are they at today. Should I kind of like just give them their quiet space, or what do I expect from them? So I love that. You can, I think Fast Company has written on it. New York Times has written on them. So you can find out about the Biodex and you actually see some of the components of it. So that could hopefully be helpful. Transparency. So how decisions are made in the organization, particularly as it relates to career. Also, like any of the metrics that leaders are seeing, all employees have access to see the dashboard and what that looks like. And then all the meeting minutes out of the senior leadership meetings are available to people. So, I mean, these are just simple things that any company can do. Well-being metrics, they need to be meaningful, and that people take a poll at the end of every day, right, at the company, like how are you doing? Like, how are things going? And then they kind of get a little bit further underneath that to understand what's not working, and then drive out to root cause. Is there something we can tweak? Is there something that we can fix? And then embedding inclusion into every aspect of the workplace and every aspect of their processes. So, they've got some work that's been published in a variety of different journals. I just find this super exciting. Like, I've got so much energy for this these days, and I'm excited to see how we might take this across many, many enterprises.
I love that. Wow. That's Pat, looks like you were going to say something. I was stepping on you.
Yeah, what I love about it, Chris, is it's just a way to reframe the whole thing. To really, from an organizational design perspective, just sort of, if you kind of check all of our experiences and biases at the door and kind of rethink about how to really build a frame that gives us insight, and builds on those principles we've talked about a few minutes ago. This is just great. Love it. Really, really love it. I'm still kind of processing a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and Rajesh describes this way that they broke down performance management. And, I remember one of the clients that I work with, we kind of did a very bottoms up approach to how could we approach, how could we think about things differently. But similarly, like they assigned, like, hey guys, here's, you guys got a problem with performance management, go fix it. Like you have free reign, bring us your proposal, but really to let people who were experiencing the process, were dissatisfied with the process, give them the opportunity. Like, let's do this together and see what they come up with. I love that. And they came up with a process that made it very clear about what it takes to get from here to here. And so long as you've done these things, you'd be, it's a very collaborative kind of crowdsourced way for peers and others in the organization to let a person know what they've done and haven't done towards that objective, and then reviewed. by experts in the space, and then the manager has an opportunity to agree or disagree. And he said 10% of the time the managers disagree, but it's always to bump them up instead of to say, no, 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 you don't get it. Nonetheless, I just find all of it so inspiring and so new and fresh, and making sense, letting the people who know the work the best give us some new proposals.
Yeah, I love this, and we've been we've been talking about how do we humanize the workplace more, and we always agree, when we talk about it, that's tough, right? Because there's human emotions and what they have to bring any given day, right? How are they feeling is very real, and so if we are going to, on one hand, say yes, we need to humanize the workplace, that means we have to accept that we are humans. Right. And we are humans. I think most of it. There might be aliens upon us. I don't want to suggest that otherwise. But I think what this allows you to do is, and like you said, is how does someone, how much do they have today to bring of themselves? And maybe it's a rough day for numerous reasons, and that's okay. Right. And we have to be able to understand that, and be able to have to be in environments where we have a safe place. So this. And Heidi, you already put the link up there. Heidi, you're on fire today. You're like the book and then the link. Thank you for that. So I really thank you for sharing that. That's super cool. And I'm going to have to.
And some of his people don't speak. They can't speak. And some of his people process slowly. So they need the agenda ahead of time so that they can write in their thoughts. I mean, it's just so fantastic to think. It helps, because of the unique population that they have, it helps to uncover, like, oh my gosh, put out the agenda ahead of time. Oh my gosh, some people can, contribute in writing, of course, but it sounds like, of course, until you don't, like you haven't done it ever, but some of the solutions can be so simple and so inclusive. Right. We weren't necessarily trying to be exclusive, but unwittingly we were being exclusive. And so that's what I love about this new opportunity to really make things that much more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. And it really does feel like it's an incredible way to start to de-bias the work environment. And because we're really picking up on human connection more, right? The human emotions more, and that is what we all share, right? And I think this is really cool. So I cannot wait to, and I intentionally didn't ask you about this before this call, so I haven't even done the research on this company, but I can't wait. So I know the first link I'm going to click on after we're done today.
Yeah. Well, super, super excited to be here with you both. I have admired your work for years, and just remember being blown away by what you guys were doing at Modern Survey. So, aligned with the kinds of things that we were doing at IBM, and just love you, and thank you for this forum. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for your amazing perspective. You have a beautiful mind, Chris, as you approach these things. So thank you for sharing everything.
Thank you, and Chris, if you don't mind, can people connect with you on
LinkedIn is great.
Not already?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn is a great space. Occasionally on Twitter, but not really. And then my website is benearglobal.com.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Chris. As always, just proud to be your friend and be able to get a chance to hear your mind come to life in these conversations. And thank you to this community and being super interactive today. And appreciate it. Enjoy the sunshine if you have it. If you don't, it will be there soon enough. All right, thank you, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
That's
have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye, Chris. Take care. Hope to see you in the real world soon.
Yes.
Yes. Bye-bye. See ya. Bye-bye, everyone.